But what I'd like to do now is turn it over to you, our people who have come, and what questions do you have for Elizabeth and Spiros?
Well, first of all, thank you, both of you, for some really interesting presentations. I feel much better informed and better prepared. I did see on one of Elizabeth's slides something that mentioned NBS, nature-based solutions. And I was just wondering if she or Spiros wanted to, I don't know, talk a little bit, I mean, in this sort of situation, what that refers to.
I think Elizabeth should take this one.
I'll just say a couple of things. Spiros, I'm sure you have also some ideas about this. So sometimes, I mean, when we look at protecting ecosystems, we sometimes look at interventions that are mechanical or technological. So, and I think the fire trucks and the fire planes and those kinds of interventions for suppression are what we describe as those are suppression tools, but they're mechanical interventions. When we're talking about nature-based solutions, we can use nature also to protect and manage the forest. And I think maybe the best, one of the best examples that I can think of from the Mediterranean for managing the forest, Spiros mentioned actually that in the past people worked and used the forest much more intensively than they do today, and one of the uses was grazing animals, and what we've seen that decline because I mean, if you live in Attica, you know that not many people are there. There are still animals being grazed in Attica, but not nearly as much as in the past. And people are not also gathering firewood in the way that they used to. But Portugal has reintroduced horses into some of its forests to graze the forest, and this is a deliberate fire prevention tool. Because horses graze, they don't kill the trees, particularly mature trees, but they clear some of the brushwood and the fuel, and they eat leaves, and so basically Portugal has deliberately, as a response to some of the devastating fires that Portugal has experienced, they've reintroduced horses into the forest in a managed and controlled way to do the work that grazing animals used to do in the past. And that's one of the nature-based solutions. There are others. We're also looking at how forests are adapting to climate change. It's hotter now, it's drier, and there's quite a lot of work looking at how different plant species are adapting to climate change and surviving these different hotter and drier conditions. I think one of the other things that we're learning about Mediterranean forests is that monoculture forests are more fire prone, but just pine trees can be extremely flammable. Whereas if you have a mixture of different plants, which is more prevalent if you just leave the forest to its own devices, that can be also a way of controlling some of the fire risks, is in replanting, trying to create a mixture of plants, sometimes deliberately and sometimes just leaving it to nature rather than planting exactly the same type of seedlings. So a different variety of forests. So those are two examples of nature-based solutions for forest management. Spiros, you may have other good examples from your experience.
Well, yeah. Well, funnily enough, when it comes to Attica, because it has been so severely affected by wildfire many times, we are in a situation now where we need to prevent grazing from taking place in the areas that are now trying to regenerate, because the combination of consecutive fires as well as overgrazing has led to the forest actually becoming a monoculture, basically just pine surviving, because pine doesn't get grazed on by sheep and goats. So yes, that doesn't by any means mean that this isn't a viable solution. I've witnessed that firsthand, having done the planning for another hiking destination near Kozani on the mountain of Burinos, where the locals there used to tell me that there was over 12,000 goats on the mountain grazing. And they were maintaining the clearings, and they were maintaining a lot of open land where a fire could be stopped if it ever was to be the case. And now there was under 2,000 goats and sheep left in that area. So we went from 12,000 to 2,000, and that has a significant impact on the ecosystem, as you mentioned. So yes, indeed, that's something. Portugal is implementing this method with grazing in the forests as we speak, after it had a very bad year in 2020. In 2020, I think it was.
Sorry, Karen, you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I threw a comment in here too, following up on what Elizabeth said about using wild horses, that's actually being suggested in the US. There's an association trying to keep the wild horses wild instead of sending them to the glue factory, and forest clearance was one of the things they suggested. But my question was, and there's actually a two-parter. So above, to what extent does the variety of trees in the forest make a difference in the advancement of a wildfire? That is, what I've seen here in Greece is it's mostly pine trees. Spiro, you mentioned it. Is there, when we replant, are we planting hardwoods or something that's harder to burn? And then secondly, maybe you could address, where do I send the plants, the tree starts that I have on my balcony, so that you can plant them? Okay.
Well, to start from the latter, it depends on what kind of trees they are. We can't just go out planting anything. We actually get approval by the forestry department as to what kinds of trees we will plant, and we are always trying to not actually buy the trees, but to actually grow them from seeds that are collected from the local forests in order to preserve biodiversity. So
is there a list?
Yeah, well, we plant oaks. We have refrained from planting pine, but not for perhaps the obvious reason. I'll let you in on that in a sec.
Okay.
We do plant oak. We plant redbud. We plant carob trees. We plant cypress trees. So generally the Mediterranean variety of trees, and yes, we don't plant a single kind of tree. We always sort of have them mixed. Now, when it comes to wildfire, the pine tree, it has taken a lot of stick, I should say, for the situation. Yes, it is a flammable kind of tree. It is. It has the resin that does make it very flammable. It's adapted to wildfire very well, and it is. It uses fire to regenerate the pine forest. Having said that, a wildfire in a pine forest is not the worst situation. Funnily enough, it's the grass fires that are more dangerous because they spread much faster, and they are the low-lying vegetation is actually more susceptible to the wind. I've actually seen.
We have this situation here on Crete, exactly
Yeah.
what you're describing. Unfortunately, Elizabeth has to leave us now, and I did want to say goodbye to her and thank her again from the bottom of my heart for joining us. And we'll look forward to hearing more about your work and how it's progressing, and that hopefully we're motivating all people in the Mediterranean to be involved and realize that no matter where you are, what you do, you can get involved in helping to solve this problem. Anything you want to say?
Thank you so much. I just want to say big thank you, and also fascinating presentation from Spiro. I will be in touch. It would be lovely to hear more about your work here. And I'm just sitting under Imito on the other side, so I know the mountain very well, and we're very, very
You on the
fond of
eastern
it.
side or the western side of the mountain?
I'm-
That would place you in
right
Athens
now
or out of
I'm
Athens.
I'm in Palini, so we're kind of northeast. But we have a view of Imito, and we're very familiar with it, and I'm so pleased that you're taking care of it. I know it has had it's had also periods where it has lost forests and regained them. So
Yes,
very,
that's
very
true.
important work that you're doing.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
thanks so much.
By all means, do get in touch. Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. All the best. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll share your
Thank you, Elizabeth.
website, the link that you put in with everyone.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Does anyone else have questions for Spiros or eventually for me?
Before we go to the next question, Gina, sorry. Just to wrap up with the previous one. Now,
Sorry.
I did mention that pine forests are susceptible to fire, but there is a very big myth about pine forests, and it's the myth of the exploding or the flying pine cone. We should mention that there is absolutely no mechanism for the pine cone to explode or to fly off and transfer fire at a distance. As a matter of fact, the broadleaves are worse at that, and we had a lot of spot fires. Even aiding the fire to cross that the Maricopi fire of 2021 to cross the national highway, and even for the fire to jump the Marathon Lake in 2021 at a distance of 500 meters. Spot fires jumping a whole lake because of the broadleaves and not the pine trees. And that's because all the leaves as the flames engulf the tree, they sort of fly off with the wind, and they take height. They can be transferred to very high altitudes, and then they will come down on new terrain and start new spot fires, which can develop and rapidly progress into new fires. And we saw a lot of that in 2021. And indeed, we do see it very often when the relative humidity is below 45%. This is another thing that people might want to hang on to as a bit of information. When you have relative humidity which is below 45%, and we get that pretty much every day in the summer. Summer days will see anything between 10 to 30, 35% relative humidity. You might get better at night, but during the day, it's likely that you're going to have conditions that will allow for the appearance of spot fires at a very large distance from the main front. So yes, the pine tree is flammable, but it's not. It's made to be. It's not the devil.
Thank you, Spiros. Brady, you have a question. Brady is our chair.
Erin, thank you very much, Spiros. I was curious to follow up on the question of how you change human use of the mountains. I'm up on the mountains a fair amount with my bicycle and also walking, looking for archaeological sites. And the mountains are basically closing down. The old trails that used to be kept by goat herds, they're covered with brush now. You basically cannot get to many mountains. The only trails that are maintained are the ones that lead to a chapel on a hillside. And there once a year, somebody will, clear the brush so you can go on the yortie of the saint. So it is clear that only human beings actively doing something on the mountain can save the mountains in the end. And do you think it's possible to create economic incentives from the government, essentially to restore more more shepherds, more goat herds, with better controls, with phased in approaches. So you allow things to recover, but do not allow just these huge swaths of scrub to take over. Just your thoughts on that.
Well, yes, certainly. I mean, this is a big issue throughout the country. It's not so much an issue for the mountains around the capital, because as you know, Athens houses something like 4.5 million people, and there's only 3-4 mountains around it that take the brunt of all these people going out over the weekends. Having said that, none of these 3 mountains actually have a viable hiking plan, or a really well-designed trail network. So yes, definitely. One way of going about it is to actually use this as a tourist attraction tool, because we know that especially the Western Europeans, as well as the people from the US, do hike a lot, and it would be smart for us to extend our tourist season from to look away from the model of the sun and the sea, which has been branded to the world as what Greece is about, and to actually start looking at developing hiking destinations. And indeed, with the weather as it is in this country, you can probably hike throughout the year. So that would be one way to fund actions like the ones you mentioned. I can see somebody with their hand up. I'm sure you have something to contribute to this. But by all means, jump in. This is a discussion.
Yeah, let me just jump in with one on Imitos and the neighboring mountains. A big new phenomenon is downhill mountain bike riding.
Oh, gosh,
and unfortunately,
yes.
Downhill is totally destructive of the mountain. It cuts these gullies that then become rivers, and so that I don't know how you deal with that, but
it gets worse. I don't know if you noticed on one of the slides we had our vehicle blocking the path of 2 motocross riders.
Yeah.
They're even worse than the downhill riders, because they love the mud as well. So they will come out right after the rain, and they will just bury their tracks all over the place. It's a big issue. I mean, we're volunteers. We can't really regulate things like that, other than just raising awareness and trying to educate people that this is an issue. We're not a law enforcement team. We cannot actually go out and prohibit people from doing that, even though there is legislation that prohibits the use of motocross, and generally mechanized sporting events are not allowed on the mountains of Imitos, Parnitha, or Penteli, with the exception of some very small areas. What we can do is talk to these people, try to get them to understand the issue, and also apply pressure to the officials, to the authorities, to take action against that. And indeed, because we have managed to have several occasions where the forestry department, in cooperation with the police, have cracked down on certain such events. But having said that, it's not enough, and it's a major issue. And indeed, thanks, Brady, for bringing it up. It's a major concern for us as well.
Thank you, Spiros. Randall, your question now?
First of all, Spiros, it's fantastic. It's a great eye-opener about many, many things. I just have two quick questions. One is the phenomenon of beekeepers on mountains, very popular honey, Vassos honey, and you're seeing more and more areas that did not have beekeepers now have beekeepers. What is, from your observation or your group's observation, what is their behavior? How is their behavior impacting your mountain?
Well, this is a big issue that you're raising here, and thanks for that. It's we've had several occasions of fires actually starting by amateur beekeepers. And I should make a distinction between amateurs and professionals, because professionals are pretty much aware of where and when to do things like smoke their beehives. There is legislation in place. I'm pretty sure you're all aware that there is a daily, during the fire season, there is a daily issue of the fire danger map issued by the Civil Protection in Greece. And whenever we have anything above a 2, so when there's the fire danger level is 3, 4, or 5, beehive smoking is prohibited. When we have a 4 and a 5, access to the mountains is prohibited anyway. That doesn't mean that people don't do it, because obviously there can't be, full control over, many of the mountainous areas. Indeed, in 2015, we had a huge fire on Imitos, which started at Vironas and ended up in Glyfada, which started by amateur beekeepers, and it was a severe blow to the mountain. So, yes, indeed, there is an issue with that, and we do try to control it as much as possible with our patrols, voluntarily, of course. We have prevented people from smoking their beehives when the winds were really strong, even though there was a ban on this. And I should say again that the professionals don't really pose much of a threat, but the amateurs, and you're considered an amateur when you have anything up to 10 beehives. Yes, there is an issue with that, of course.
Thank you. Randall, you said you had 2 questions. Was there another one?
With the growth of all trails, you're seeing people, Americans, I know, hiking places that they didn't hike before, and knowing about mountains that they didn't know before. And it seems to me that that is a trend that's only expanding. Is there a way for making that a force for good? The fact that people are seeing and learning about things. And some of these trails are quite handy, I mean, to the places they're going. Up here in Thessaloniki, they applied. I mean, we're talking about hikes in Sesu, hikes from Sesu down to the neighborhoods that border the forest of Sesu, and the comparable thing in Halkidiki, where people want to go to Halkidiki, but they want to do something different. And there are many trails to be had. If this is what seems to be an optimistic thing, people knowing much more about different places to hike, is it a force that will help the good effort, or is it something that's dangerous?
Well, I believe it's definitely a good thing, but it does come with certain dangers. I have actually been professionally involved in developing hiking destinations throughout Greece, so
Right.
I can't really say much bad about this, and I see a lot of good in it. Even when it comes down to wildfire, a proper hiking network does provide access to the hotshot crews and to our foot soldiers, if you like, to get to places and fight the fire. Right. And that's just one of the benefits, of the many benefits that it provides. Having said that, right, in 2015, we actually had, at that fire that I mentioned earlier, which started from some beekeepers, we had a fatality of somebody hiking up on the mountain of Imitos, and they lost their life because the wildfire actually found them up on the mountain, and they couldn't escape it. So there is a danger, and people need to heed the fire danger map that is issued daily. People sometimes react to bans, and I do agree with that. You can't ban people from going up on the mountain, but sometimes people need to understand that it is for their own safety that they are not allowed to go hiking on a particularly windy day when the fire danger level might be at 5, which is considered extreme. Because in those situations, there is extreme fire behavior that can make its appearance, and when it does, nobody can run away from a raging inferno. The fire doesn't get tired. It races as fast as Usain Bolt used to run. It can reach 12 kilometers an hour, and it's going to get you. It's as simple as that. Combined with certain issues that relate to the topography and things like that, it's a thing to be cautious of. But when it comes to the trails and the paths, they need to be there and they need to be maintained, and there is a lot of benefits that come from them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sarah Jane, you had a question for me, and then I think we're going to need to wrap up unless someone else has because we could talk about this all night. I know I could listen to Spiros. This is amazing. But Sarah Jane, you had a question?
I was just curious about your volunteer group, how it works. I mean, how do you know when there's a fire and that you need to respond? I mean, do you have people on the mountain watching, and do you train them for that? And then,
well, we do. Yes, we do. We have constant fire watches, especially on the days that are considered to be high risk days, high danger, high fire danger days, when the level is quite high. The fire watch is actually open to the public. I mean, even you could join us for a 3-hour watch. You're always going to be accompanied by a trained volunteer that will know how to radio in an incident if you spot it. A lot of people actually join us and see it as a bit of therapy, whereby you leave your phone to the side, you're in nature, you have some calm, and you're actually also doing a good thing by being on watch to call in whatever incident, or even to prevent, say, a beekeeper from starting to smoke their beehives. That's actually happened in the past. We've identified a vehicle coming to the edge of a forest. We knew there were beehives there, and as soon as we saw through the binoculars somebody coming out of the vehicle and putting on, the very distinct white attire of the beekeepers, we realized that they were going to smoke their beehives, and we radioed in, and a firefighting vehicle got to that location just as they were preparing to start, the embers that generate the smoke, and prevented them from doing that, thus perhaps preventing a disaster. Who knows? So yes, there are people out on watch. Depending on what the weather is like, there will be people out on watch. We're not there all the time. We're not there 24/7. We don't have the manpower for that. And that's why we call on people to join us and help us with perhaps getting to the point where we're going to be there for 24/7 watches. And the firefighting sector will also have a situation where they will be active during some hours, and especially whenever these hours are the dangerous ones.
Okay. And Gina, do you do the same on Crete? This group?
No, we don't. We definitely don't have the manpower at the moment to have watches. It would be great. But remember, we are in a rural community with small villages, and the villages are mostly down at the coast. The mountains are behind us. So believe me, when there's a fire, it's seen pretty quickly. And I guess you could say the bush drums beat and the phones ring and everybody's calling, and it happens very quickly. I'm always astonished at how fast people react. Obviously, it's not foolproof. We are working slowly. We have an idea to work with local shepherds. We have a lot of shepherds here, and they are out all the time. They are in the mountains, and trying to involve them in the group more actively, that they are having a kind of scout function.
Gina, remind me, did you say you're in Hanya, or did somebody else say that?
No, we're on the southern coast of Crete, down between Matala and Irapetra.
Well, if any one of you is in on, I know somebody. I'm pretty sure somebody mentioned Hanya earlier, but do look at Hanya trails online. This is a project I was involved in as well in the past, and yes, I can vouch for the shepherds' help that you mentioned. They were an extreme help when it came to actually, planning the hikes and well, not the hikes, the trails, incorporate them into a modern hiking destination. So yes, yeah.
Thanks. Okay, everyone, we have reached 9:30 and most of our people are leaving us just because, and maybe we have to do a follow-up fire.